Hey, what is going on, guys? And welcome to our 41st in-depth character review, where we are doing yet again another 2-for-1 special, and that being the Sith Assassin and Sith Trooper. Now that they have been free to play for a little bit of time, and hey, we just got 2 more Sith left to review, might as well finally close off the Sith faction. So let's get right into it and talk about the history of these 2 characters. Both Sith Assassins and Sith Troopers were important enforcers of the Sith Empire that followed Darth Revan. Sith Assassins were all trained in the art of deception to conceal themselves and move invisibly in order to obscure their movements and ambush their enemies, which gave them the upper hand. Sith Troopers were the foot soldiers of the Sith Empire, and their armor was very unique, where it was designed to induce fear in their enemies to ensure the will of the Sith was protected and enforced throughout the galaxy. In Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, we continue to see these Sith units carry out their talents of utilizing shadows to their advantage while also securing a firm defensive position for the Sith as they advance to crush their enemies. And first of all, we gotta talk about how do we unlock and star up these characters, and fortunately they are quite easy to farm. Sith Assassin, the main free-to-play method that I highly recommend you use solely, is Cantina Battle 8C, where it costs 16 energy, and Sith Trooper is not too far away from that, where the free-to-play method is Cantina Battle 8B, also costing 16 energy. And we also had opportunities to farm them in the Shard Shop. You can also get them in the daily shipments, Chromium packs. However, for these 2 characters, I recommend solely using the Cantina, seeing how easily accessible they are. Let's now take a look at the stats of these 2 characters, and since they are fundamentally 2 different characters, one being an attacker and one being a tank, we will see a lot of differences between them. But first of all, let's see speed, which is very important for Sith Assassin, of course. Sith Assassin is number 17 in the game, being at 151, and Sith Trooper is at number 115, being at 95. So although Sith Trooper has low speed, we can see that as being a great thing later on. Next up here is potency. They both apply debuffs, so definitely important. Sith Assassin is number 57 in the game, having 32% potency, and Sith Trooper is at number 38, having 37% potency. Now when taking a look at health, Sith Assassin is number 58, being at 17,895, and Sith Trooper is number 13, being at 25,985. And since we're on this train, let's take a look at protection. Sith Assassin is number 54, having 18,879, and Sith Trooper having a very high protection at number 11, holding 29,529. And let's add both of those by looking at the combined health and protection for both of these characters. Sith Assassin, number 55, having 36,774, and Sith Trooper is number 12, holding 55,514, so a very tanky character indeed. Now let's take a look at the more offensive things, where we look at maximum damage. Sith Assassin is number 38, having 6,189 as her maximum damage, and the Sith Trooper is at number 110, having 3,362. Now, basic damage is looking quite good for Sith Assassin. Sith Assassin is number 9, where she has 5,661, and Sith Trooper yet again at the very bottom, understandably, being number 99, holding 3,362 as their maximum basic damage. And lastly, AoE. Right now, there are 43 currently in the game that have an AoE. Sith Trooper is the only one out of the 2 that has an AoE, and he is number 39, holding 2,089 as his AoE. The great thing about both of these characters is that they do not need Zeta mats in order to be good in this game. We first take a look at Sith Assassin's kit. Their basic attack is known as Exploit Weakness, where it deals physical damage to a target enemy, inflicts evasion down for 2 turns, and gains offense up for 2 turns. If the target was already debuffed, she gains stealth for 2 turns. And hey, if Sith Assassin already had stealth, ignore the target's protection, and we will talk about strategy and cool stuff about these kits later on. Sith Assassin has 2 special abilities and 0 unique abilities, with the first special being known as Dark Shroud. It has a 3-turn cooldown, and it dispels all debuffs from Sith Assassin, and she gains stealth and foresight for 2 turns. If she already had stealth, she gains speed up and tenacity up for 2 turns. And then if Sith allies are present, they gain 12% turn meter for each buff on her. And the other special is Electrocute, also has a 3-turn cooldown where it deals physical damage to a target enemy and inflicts stun for 1 turn. If Sith Assassin already had stealth, dispel all buffs from Sith Assassin, deal 5% more damage for each effect dispelled and for each living Sith ally, and on top of this, you can ignore the target's protection. And before we talk about all the goodness behind this kit, let's take a peek at Sith Trooper's kit, where his basic attack is Disruptor Blast. You deal physical damage to a target enemy with a 70% chance to inflict defense down for 3 turns. If the target was already debuffed, you get to ignore their protection. So yet again, very similar to Sith Assassin's basic. Crimson Barrage is next, having a 3-turn cooldown. You deal physical damage to all enemies with a 70% chance to inflict offense down for 2 turns. Then you gain protection up equal to 5% for each debuffed enemy for 2 turns, and best of all, it ignores protection just like his basic attack. And finally, Vulcan's Legacy. It's his unique ability where Sith Trooper has 100% defense. On top of that, whenever a Sith ally uses a special ability or if they fall below 50% health, Sith Trooper gains defense up for 2 turns. But if he already had defense up, he gains taunt for 2 turns. And if he already had taunt beforehand, he gains retribution for 2 turns. And then Sith Trooper gains defense up for 2 turns at the start of each encounter. So right at the beginning of the battle, he will have defense up. Before diving into my subjective part of the review, let's pull up my little graphic showing the gear requirements for these characters. And long story short, they are much more difficult to gear up compared to other characters in this game. A lot of gold gear needed, and purple gear, they are way above the average. The average right now being 1,140 purple pieces. Sith Assassin is number 26, needing 1,320 pieces, and Sith Trooper is number 20 in the game, needing 1,380 pieces, and they need loads of stun cuffs. 400 stun cuffs needed in total between these 2 characters, 400 Carbantis in total. Sith Assassin also needs 250 Mark 6 hypo syringes. So if you are planning on gearing these characters, make sure you start up your stun cuff factory because it will be a long gearing process. All right, let's take a look at my subjective review, and I first want to talk about my thoughts and some synergy ideas and some strategy ideas as well. Sith Assassin is like the Jawa Engineer, but for the Sith. Almost just as fast as Jawa Engineer as well, only about 2 points lower than Jawa Engineer, and could really boost the turn meter of fellow Sith, which helps them out a lot, seeing how a lot of them are a bit on the slower side, such as Darth Maul. Her ability Dark Shroud is absolutely deadly when in a Darth Maul Zeta team. Darth Maul already grants a lot of turn meter bonuses, and she will be able to grant even more on a pretty steady and consistent basis. She's also great at self-preservation by granting herself foresight, stealth, speed up, and tenacity up, while also being able to cleanse herself of debuffs, which allows her to survive in lineups outside of the Sith as well. She can also deal out a pretty large amount of damage, as we see from Electrocute. When you pile up the buffs on her, and if she's in a full Sith team, she can churn out a lot of damage, sometimes wiping out some of the lower health characters like Emperor Palpatine. And in the situation where she does not wipe someone out, she can also stun them, which is a great mechanic in this game. One of the coolest strategies to use with Sith Assassin and both Sith Trooper is pairing them up with Savage Opress. Sith Assassin pairs up beautifully with Savage's Overpower by getting enemies below 50% health, since her basic attack can ignore protection and get right at the heart of the enemy. Although Darth Nihilus is not a mainstream leader in this game as of now, it is critical to run Sith Assassin with a Darth Nihilus leadership, since Darth Nihilus does not grant any sort of turn meter bonuses or speed bonuses. So even though she really makes the Sith amazingly powerful, she can also work outside of the Sith faction, since she has a lot of self-preservation, she has foresight, tenacity, a really powerful stun, but it's definitely optimal to toss her in a Sith lineup. Now, Sith Trooper is also interesting, but very confined to the Sith faction. In this game, tanks that do not auto-taunt are generally always seen as inferior, while passive taunts are usually the best in the game as they adapt in battle and are seen as the king. Although not exactly like Baze or Short Trooper, he combines elements of Royal Guard and Kenobi and a little hint of Baze, where he reacts based on how his fellow Sith are performing, which may allow him to taunt more often if his fellow Sith are spamming special abilities or in the chance they fall below 50% health. So although he won't taunt at the very second of the game, he will taunt very quickly since he is already starting up with defense up, and most likely Sith Assassin or another fast Sith such as Darth Sidious will be one of the first to start in the game, and this will instantly trigger Sith Trooper's taunt. He also does not need to be fast since he will counterattack a lot, and you will want him protecting the Sith as long as possible. When under a Darth Nihilus lead, he becomes almost unstoppable unless you are very strategic. Since he has high health, high protection, and high defense, plus he can counterattack under a Darth Nihilus lead, this is one of the best ways to use him, as it makes him super tanky and very difficult to take down. And like Sith Assassin, this works amazingly well with Savage Opress because he can help chop away the health and ignore the protection of your enemies, which allows Savage Opress to come in, knock out an enemy who is below 50% health. Even if they have 5 bajillion protection, it will not matter for Savage's overpower. So let's take a peek at the mortal enemies in case you are using these characters. They both do share a lot of similar mortal enemies, mainly buff immunity, buff dispellers, ability block. Daze and shock are their biggest threats since they rely a ton on buffs, turn meter, counterattacks, and using their specials. Tenacity, Foresight, and Cleansers prevent them from applying debuffs or avoids their attack overall. Healers to make sure their allies do not fall below 50% health. Annihilate, Overpower, and Deathmark are especially needed to bring a speedy defeat to Sith Trooper, and it's one of his biggest threats. Turn meter removal and speed down is great to slow down Sith Assassin. AoE characters are great against Sith Assassin and Sith Trooper because if they are taunting or if they have stealth, AoE characters can just hit everyone, ignoring those two mechanics in their entirety. And be careful of Grandmaster Yoda. If he steals a lot of the buffs that Sith Assassin has or the retribution that Sith Trooper might carry, he can spread it around to his team and they will counterattack left and right. I've already mentioned a lot of the best friends already, but essentially all of the Sith are amazing. Sith Assassin is ideally perfect for Maul. Sith Trooper is amazing under a Darth Nihilus lead, but they work well with other Sith such as a Palpatine lead. He gives extra health regeneration, and potency, which is great if you don't have Maul or Nihilus. Savage is great because, as we mentioned, these two characters can ignore protection and allow him to crush his enemies a lot faster. Sith Assassin can work great in many teams, such as stealth teams, teams revolving around stuns, or essentially any other teams or characters that can cleanse or provide a lot of buffs, so she is doing the most possible in battle. Sith Trooper's amazing strength is his taunt, and seeing how he can't taunt outside of a Sith team really does limit his best friends that he has. However, if you pair him up with characters that can cleanse him, that is great if you can pair him up with characters that grant defense up so he can start taunting and gaining retribution. So overall, you will need to have him in a Sith team in order to make him great. For the mods, they both have a very unique circumstance. For Sith Assassin, when we look at the mod set, I highly recommend either getting her speed or the critical damage or critical chance mod sets. Those should be your #1 priority, whereas Sith Trooper, you should really focus on health, defense, and tenacity. Those should be your top choices. Potency is also helpful for the both of them, as well as offense, especially if you're running a Nihilus lead, but it's not as important as the other things I listed. Primary and secondary mods, kind of similar. Sith Assassin, lots and lots of speed. Like the droid teams who use Jawa Engineer, you want to make sure Sith Assassin goes first in battle. Most likely, you will want to give your best speed secondaries and primaries to her. Critical damage, critical chance, offense, and protection are also great choices. Whereas with Sith Trooper, mainly just load him up on protection since you do not need to worry about his speed that much. You kind of want him to be a slow tank that never loses his taunt and retribution. Health, offense, tenacity, and defense are also good choices, but protection should be your #1 goal since you can potentially increase it to over 80% additional protection on top of what he already has. And lastly, we have Yoda's do or do not checklist, and for Arena, Galactic War, and Dark Side battles and Cantina battles, they are all due, especially with Sith team. They have a lot of survivability, a lot of self-preservation, so very great things. Mod challenges is a do not. There are no Sith specific mod challenges in this game, but you can use them for the generic health mod challenges. No ships yet, so do not for both of them. For the Rancor raid and AAT raid, I will just say slightly do. They're not #1 choices, but they can work under a Darth Vader Zeta leadership, but it's not as effective since Darth Vader's leadership kind of got patched for the Rancor raid and not #1 choices for the AAT raid. But if you're running a Sith team or a stun lock team, they can definitely be helpful. But we made it to the finish line, guys. Let's pull up the Hall of Fame and see where these two characters rank in this game. They both offer various great things. However, Sith Assassin is the more flexible character and Sith Trooper is very confined to the Sith faction. And with that in mind, from Grandmaster to Youngling, we are placing Sith Assassin as a master and Sith Trooper as a knight. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video and learned something new. Let me know if you're gonna farm and gear up these characters and how you're going to use them, and of course let me know what the next episode should be on. And if you did enjoy this video, go ahead and drop me a like. Check out my Patreon page if you'd like to have access to these in-depth review materials and early access to these videos, and subscribe so you're not missing a thing. And we will talk again soon. Peace out.